Hello everyone, welcome. My name is MJ Pestridge. Welcome to another P3D video. Today I'm going to quickly run through my setup and how I use P3D currently. I'm going to go through my NVIDIA graphics card control panel settings, my settings within the P3D, and how I utilize add-ons in a real quick form. So I try and keep P3D as default as possible when I'm flying. I only kind of, in the scenery library, I only kind of show the areas that I'm actually going to be using. Otherwise, I untick those areas that I'm not going to be flying over, so it doesn't load into the sim. So I'm here in Hawaii. Literally, the only thing ticked in my scenery library is, of course, all the default stuff remains ticked at all times, but then I have the Hawaii whole chain of islands add-on, and that's it really. Plus an airport for Japan, but that's basically it. And that really helps to save loading times and the VRAM as well, because the VRAM, especially with add-ons that aren't compatible or optimized for P3D, can really take a lot of VRAM and cost a lot of performance if you're not careful. So anyway, let's quickly open up. Oh yeah, and where possible, I always try to use photo real terrain. I never try and use like regional stuff that's kind of made up. It's always like photoreal as much as possible. I pretty much have the entire world photorealed apart from a couple of areas, and in them cases I will use like global based textures or default textures, or some land class, but pretty much I try and use photoreal wherever I can. Right, so let me close the sim down, and I'll show you my my settings, and I shall bring up my graphics card. So basically, there's a few options here that I make sure that this slider says performance, and then I go and use the 3D image settings specific for P3D as well. I set up now. I try and basically preserve as much of my CPU as possible. At the end of the day, the CPU is kind of like the heart of your whole rig, and if it's stressed and if it gets heated and there isn't adequate cooling, basically it can limit your GPU, and then you're basically running your sim off your CPU, which is going to be a struggle. So I try and offload as much to the GPU as possible. So anisotropic filtering and anti-aliasing, I get the GPU to do it because it's more efficient for the GPU to do it. So basically I turn off all my anti-aliasing in the sim of the menu, which let's start up P3D, and I'll show you my settings there as well. So I get the GPU to basically do the anti-aliasing. I also limit my frame rate here, max frame rate, to whatever the refresh rate is of my monitor. Not to say that that's the kind of frame rate I want to get, but just to say this is my monitor's refresh rate, don't go any higher, there's no point. I actually stick on the vertical sync adaptive half refresh rate to try and get it as close to 30 as possible. Now, a lot of the time my frames are between 45 and 60 depending on where I'm flying and what I'm flying. Very rarely is it hovering around the 30 mark, and I find that actually works a lot better in P3D, as well as that that should actually be on adaptive maximum performance, sorry. the power management mode, I have tried and played with the adaptive mode. I had a lot more crashes when I was on the adaptive mode, and but the frame rate was higher, or it was able to keep a higher frame rate. But I just had a lot more crashes when suddenly a lot more power was needed. So it's got to be for maximum performance at all times. Also making sure that I select the actual GPU here and not auto select. I keep my clamp on rather than allow. I find that is better for better quality, but if you don't have a good graphics card, click allow and you'll get better frames. If you tick high quality here, it actually disables the filtering on any textures and preserves a little GPU power. Same with trilinear optimization on, and everything else is basically default. So that's basically it. Now, I have a surround physics. I get my CPU to do that rather than my GPU. I have my refresh rate set to 60, and I'm always using my native display here, which is 4K. And also, there's another one, override to reference mode, using the full gamma dynamic range if it's a 4K HDR monitor. And that basically is all my settings in my control panel. Now, on the menu for here, traffic, I set to 25. I do go on FLIGHTSIM, which means I do get both AI and FLIGHTSIM on. It just fills out the world, but I just ignore the AI ones. Road traffic, I have set to 36, freeways only, mainly because I use the Black Marble traffic pack. And for that, I turn off the road lights as well. Other than that, I also have a ship and ferries add-on, which only requires 6%, so I set that to 10. I have my resolution set to 4K, but I only use 2K textures, basically because my GPU can't really take the 4K. I get more crashes when I click 4K, and basically textures actually look better if I do use 4K because they more closely match my resolution here. By having 2K here, I should actually be applying anti-aliasing, which I do in the GPU. I actually find that variable refresh rate also kind of works well. I don't have a FreeSync monitor. I think my monitor has the capability of G-Sync, but I've disabled that. I don't use that when using my PC. Now, I have a 1080 Ti GTX card, okay? So basically, any of the settings in here, my card is best suited for the high setting. So basically, I only set basically if it's going to say high, which for me, like very dense. There's a few settings that I want to preserve and keep. Now, scenery complexity, if you want to see everything your add-ons will give you, then set this to very dense. There is no point in setting it to extremely dense because that is a setting beyond what the add-on was created in anyway. So very dense is the highest it can ever really go for your add-ons. Autogen vegetation density and autogen building density, you can set these to dense or beyond, and it's this slider here that will determine how far out they go. If you don't have a very good card, I suggest low. I have a good card, so I can actually use high, but in high population areas, I use medium. And I tick off the 3D autogen vegetation. It just doesn't look good. The tessellation factor, now this basically determines how hard your CPU is going to be running. The higher that setting, obviously the sharper your mountains will be, the more points of data go into the mesh resolution, but the harder your CPU uses. So if you find your CPU usage hitting like 100 or 90 or even 85 constantly when you run, and you have this set to the highest, then run it down a little bit and your usage will actually drop as well. And again, I match only to high because I have a 1080 Ti, and I find that these settings work best with my graphics card. And that's kind of how you've got to run your sim settings, is match it to what your graphics card is capable of. Some of these settings can be done, with the CPU stuff, but it's like match it to your graphics card. If you have got say 8 gig and it's not as good as a 1080 Ti, then go with the medium or low settings. I tick 7cm texture resolution, which is kind of pointless because the landscape, this refers to the landscape, not the airports. There are airports that have 7cm, but this only refers to the landscape, which, to be honest, there's no higher resolution texture for landscape beyond 30cm. That's like the best. So I might as well have placed it here, because I'm not going to see much difference, but I do place it at the highest, because I tend to find that the textures are sharper when they load in on the landscape. Like mega scenery is sharper. Might be just a thing on my mind though. Mesh resolution, don't set it to 1. There are glitches and errors no matter if you have third-party mesh or not. I actually don't run third-party mesh now. I've completely knocked out that third-party mesh from my PC because the default is actually really good. So and I set it to 2 meters. I would recommend setting it to 10 for if your PC is not as good as a 1080 Ti graphics card, and you will find that you know there's not much difference between 2 and 10. Obviously there is difference, but there's not much visually. Always tick high resolution terrain textures, and I always have my water and my special effects set to the highest because that doesn't actually do much in terms of performance to your PC. And if you're using my CFG, this slider is a kind of a VRAM manager now. If you increase it up high, it's going to increase your VRAM quite considerably. I don't recommend even the high setting. The low setting is very similar to medium, but the shadows and the draw distance don't go out as far. So low is what you just saw in the beginning of this video, by the way. I have mine set to low, and it doesn't really need to change. Lighting, I try and have as much of the shadows ticked as possible, but I don't tick vegetation because I find that I get a lot of DXGI errors or crashes when I do. But I do want to see shadows because I really think it enhances a visual sort of realistic look, and so I kind of set mine to high, but the draw distance, I would say, the quality is more important than the draw distance. You do get a frame drop between ultra and high, so I would say high is the highest you ever want to set that. And I set my shadow distance to the draw distance to high, just to match that high setting that you know, my graphics card can take. It could go down further, and I probably recommend setting it on low or medium personally. Bloom, the higher your bloom goes, by the way, the more bright your landscape will get. If you're finding things a little dark, up your bloom, but I do recommend it being below 0.10. Or turned off completely, but then you might find it's a little bit too dark, so give it a little bit of bloom and it lightens up that that landscape. I set these to 1 because I don't really want to change the brightness within the sim. I want to do that with my monitor or with Windows itself. I don't run Chase Plane anymore, so these are now the settings that I use. And so yeah, that's basically it. That's basically my settings for P3D. How I run my add-ons now is pretty simple. I only pop in this folder what I'm going to fly over. I don't have everything that's XML'd in this folder. I basically have that somewhere else, like in a directory here, and then I just pop in what I'm going to use during that flight. It really does help to save VRAM and loading time, so I really recommend doing that. But if you do that and you pop these out, so like if I'm in Narita right now doing a video, but if I wasn't going to be in Narita, I'd take that out, I'd delete that folder, and it wouldn't be a part of my sim. But the indexes will get screwed up if you do that. So what you have to do is every time you change anything in your scenery library, go into program data, go into the Lockheed Martin folder, and go in here and delete all these files, you know. And the sim will rebuild it. Now, it's the same as if you have Black Marble, which I highly recommend. It's the same as rebuilding the index, but Black Marble goes one step further with rebuilding the index in that it also relayers your scenery CFG file. Doesn't touch your scenery library, but it just makes sure that its stuff is at the top where it should be, and everything else is as it should be as well. It's the same as ticking this box here. And if you install anything new, I really recommend ticking refresh the black marble settings, so it can then sort of adjust what it needs to in that add-on. And that's basically it. Again, I only load in what I'm going to use, and I even do that as far as my planes. I have a hangar here full of everything I own, which I haven't installed everything yet, but I only pop it in when I'm actually going to fly it. So as you can see here, I've got this here, I've got the PMDG, I've got the Dash 8, but that's really about it, BAC 111, and then the default stuff here as well, and that's about it really. That's how I use my sim, and in all honesty, I get between 45 to 60 FPS on average, pretty much anywhere in the world. Sometimes it will go down to 30 if I'm in like New York City, high density area, but other than that, I don't really get proper crashes. The sim looks great, as you can just see, and I really recommend using photoreal over regional products that have kind of been made and might look a bit cartoony. Photoreal is really where you want to go with P3D version 5. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Told you it was going to be a short one. Don't forget, if you are a subscriber of my channel, you are automatically entered into a giveaway where I give 50 euros each month away to any one of my subscribers. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber to my channel, put a comment down in the videos of P3D, and at the end of the month during my live vlog where I rate my takeaway, I will choose one lucky winner. You will get your 50 euros. You just contact me on the back end of my channel, and I'll send the vouchers to you. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.